Welcome back to another episode of Monday Madness, where I have very little time in between jobs and running about and doing things, and so I am reading to you one of the stories that I have written. I eventually will do just a compilation of these, I think. So for today, we are doing a short story that I wrote a little while ago, and it is a super short one. It's less than 5,000 words long, but it is inspired by this prompt that I found, I think, somewhere on Tumblr or Reddit or something like that, and I decided to write a little sort of mini story scene about it. So it is titled what the prompt was, which is, did that siren turn into me? And yeah, here is the rest of the story. And I did some very, very quick artwork for it, for which I am sorry. So, is there something you want to tell me then? That smirk was infuriating. It made looking away the only possible thing to be done. Nope, looking away, away, but holy hell, those eyes. He could just stare until he melted into puddles. No! Again, firmer this time. Who was he trying to convince? The man beside him laughed. Clearly he was not fooled. No, indeed. Kairos, the smug asshat, was too damn clever sometimes. Hell, all the time. And those stupid, gorgeous eyes had noticed. And there was nowhere to hide. And... Bloody hell, just... Alright, what? Say it, would you? Maybe if he sat here with his hands over his face for the rest of his life, Kairos would leave him be. Oh, come on, look at me, you idiot. Someone much stronger than him was tugging at his fingers. No, he couldn't do it. Absolutely not. No way, never. Because if he looked at his best friend, he would want to crumble into pieces. That would definitely give it away. And any hope that Kairos hadn't quite put it all together yet would be dashed, like the ship on the rocks. That was a good point. The ship. He risked it, for a glance between his fingers towards the shore. Yep, there she was. Poor girl. It really hadn't been her fault. They'd let her down. There she lay, beached and broken. What a waste. Perhaps they could save her if they found enough timber. Perhaps that could be a distraction from everything else. If they got started right now, they could snatch the last of the fading light. He was handy enough with an axe, and there was 2 of them. Surely they could make some sort of botched job repairs. Enough to get the poor girl seaworthy again and go as far away as they could. That could be a plan then. Now all he had to do was convince Kairos to... Quit smiling like that, would you? Why did he bother? When had the smirking irritant ever listened? But it's funny! Kairos was grabbing again, laughing. Right, come on, it's funny! But the hands stayed clamped firm. You really want me to say all this stuff to you while you're hiding? Just say it, Care, bloody hell! If he had been quicker, they would be miles across the waves into the sunset right now, probably swinging a bottle past between them, and the captain would still be alive. And the rest. All right, fine. The tugging stopped, leaving his hands over his face. There was a shift, a soft thud, then another. Kairos chucked his waterlogged boots down into the sand and lay back, sprawled on the rocks, tucking his arms under his head. Then, agonizingly clearly, he said, That siren turned into me, when they were trying to get you. They transform into whatever you want most, right? And that one turned into me. Every curse he had ever heard began to bubble up past his throat. Bile stung as he bit them all back. This was it then. No hope left. Kairos knew. He had seen. He thought it was funny. Funny, though. Maybe that was good? For the best, yeah? If he thought it was silly, dumb, a joke, then it could all go away. A small glimmer of light beaded into his heart. It could all get swept out with the tide, and they could start going back to whatever normal they could grab at. You're not going to say nothing? Crap. Say something. Seriously, anything at all. Care. All right, that's a start. His name. Now something else. Anything at all. Anything. You can't exactly make this hell worse, so just cobble some damn words together and... I'm sorry. Bloody hell, maybe silence would have been better. You're sorry? Perplexed eyes blinked. Uh-huh. Would you just... With a long sigh, the stronger hands were back, but this time they did not pull or tug. Instead, they sat gently over his own. Soft. Kind? Was his friend being kind in all of this? Right, it's funny, I swear. You don't gotta hide. Funny how? He sniffed through the sole of his palms. 'Cause I had no idea. That finally made Rory drop his hands. Overbright eyes stared down into that grinning face he would recognise anywhere. That true? You really had no clue? Hey, you're a poet and you didn't know it. Maybe the grin wasn't as smug as he'd first thought. Kairos swept hair from his vision and nodded. And yeah, I didn't know. You kept this one real close to the chest, huh? Course I did. But why? It was Rory's turn to laugh, but his was hollow. The sound echoed in his chest like a gong. You're too damn smart to be asking me that. Then pretend I'm a moron. Tell me why. That ain't fair. He scrubbed at his eyes. Kairos watched his friend with a stung expression. Wish you'd just said something. How long? Ages, all right? That what you want to hear? I've been sweet on you for ages. Months. Year and a bit, maybe. I don't know. It just sort of happened, so I'll sort it out. It'll all be right again. It'll bugger off and you can pretend you never figured it out. Like, it can all just go back to how it was. Screw that! Why was he sitting up? Huh? Kairos was leaning into his shoulder. I said screw that. Sounds like a rubbish plan. I'm vetoing it. You can't veto it. It ain't your plan. Involves me, don't it? So I get a say. Sure. You get to say, great, let's do it. Then I'll... You seriously don't get this, do you? Kairos shoved him, hard. It sent Rory over onto his side, struck speechless. Around 30 seconds passed them by. An eternity. Silence in the sand. Even the tide had cooled off, as though the ocean itself was bating its breath, waiting. Kairos was up on his knees, eyes narrowed. Hurt. Was that what that was? The sand burned hot, near enough to sting after a day beaten down by sunshine. Rory scrambled to stand. Screw you, he mumbled, smacking dirt from his clothes. Screw me? Screw you! Damn it, Kairos was tall. He'd always been tall and stunning. How had the man never known? The number of times Rory had caught himself just staring, how had it never been obvious? Was Kairos just messing with him? Where are you going? He was tall and he was stunning and he was walking away. Crap, oh crap. Care! Hey, Care, where are you going? But he wasn't stopping, even without boots. Pretending I never figured it out! Kairos yelled into the sea spray. Salt ignited the air. Heat pounded his lungs. Something wet pierced his eyes as he kept on walking, stomping through the sand, going anywhere at all. The beach was rapidly turning into dirt and grass. He had to find somewhere to go. Wood. He could gather wood and build a fire. Perfect. Brilliant. Fire. He could do that. Every word was ringing in his ears as twigs snapped under bare feet, hands pushed, shoving through low-dangling branches as he just kept on going. Wood. Look for wood. Build a fire. He couldn't. He had to. Breathe in and breathe out and shut up everything for a bit. If the shouts in his head would stop, then he could think. A stick twanged against his shin. Kairos sucked a swear through his teeth and halted, slouching into the bough of a tree slung across his makeshift path. It hugged his shoulders, and he let it. The lapping tide was distant but determined. His eyes flickered closed as he listened. Waves crashed into rocks, and there he remained, heart pounding. Rai had no clue. Maybe he hadn't said it right. No, he definitely hadn't. Worry crept in. Did I ever actually say it? The answer came too, squelching into his mind with a nasty twist. I didn't. I just got mad and stropped off. That's what he had done. It sat uncomfortable in his guts, but there was nothing he could do to shift it. Blood and tears, he had to go back. Something needed to be said. Secrets were spiralling and spiralling over, boiling in between them. Did he drive the knife in, or had he only given it the final stab? Surely they could survive it. Years of company sat at their heels. That was worth something. Rory was his... My what? Well, this was a brand new can of shivering worms he had no idea how to deal with. Could he even venture to call Rai his friend in this moment? Surely not. No one peeking in at their situation would believe it. Friends did not abandon each other on stranded beaches when the sun was going down. And Rai was scared. Hell, that must have been obvious. And he'd left anyway. Definitely not friends then. But he's my... Still waiting on any kind of answer. Anything would do. What was Rai? Maybe having a name to put to the two of them could stop his racing heart. So then, what were they to one another? Rai's my... My. He's. My. Wishful thinking had hijacked his slumber for months. Dreams came and went, and always with them was Rye's face. His lopsided smile, deft fingers twiddling his hair while he thought hard, his truly atrocious dancing. It had been bundled up and gift-wrapped, turned into nonsense as he slept. Was that the missing name? Rye was his dream? Kairos shook his head, then turned and banged his forehead into the trunk several times. The twirled tree dropped a large seed onto his nose in retaliation. Rye is my... out loud this time. Perhaps that's what did it. Oh. Yeah. Oh, crap. Yeah. But he's not, though. Yeah. Maybe if I ask him, he could be. Because that was the problem. It wasn't a name for something they already were. It was a hope. The secret, hidden hope Kairos had bitten back for months. Rye wasn't his anything. But oh, how he wished that Rye was his. Dark had truly fallen when both men were back on the beach. Armfuls of kindling dropped in a pile as Kairos glanced around. Where was he? Rye? No answer. Rye? Louder, across the rocks. Rye? He felt his call switch into a plea, but Rye wouldn't go anywhere, right? He wouldn't do anything, right? He wouldn't. Even as Kairos jerked that thought from his head, scattering it out to sea, still a nagging fear gripped at his spine. It burrowed in, settling in a knot around his lungs. Breathing hard, he began to run. There were footprints, faint in the returning tide, but there they were, heading further up the coast. Back turned to the wrecked ship, he went in pursuit. Rye! Cooling waves collided at his knees. Rye! Where was the moon? Rye? Where were the stars? Rye! If he were a giant, he would blow an almighty breath and wipe every cloud from the sky. Rye! A giant? What in the world was he thinking? They hadn't had water for hours. Must be dehydration, making his brain giddy. Giants and sirens. Wait. Rye, you know I'm sorry. Yeah, I know. That was Rory. Come sit with me. Who was that? Rye? Kairos scrambled past a wall of rocks, landing up to his waist in a tidal pool. The water was so cold it itched. Hey, Rye? Rory was there. Not alone, though. There was another figure perched on a flat shelf of stone, half submerged in the pool. As Kairos looked on, the figure moved closer. Rory let them. They were snug and cozy, soft waves behind them. Rye! But he was not heard. The figure reached out a hand. Rye! The hand settled at Rory's cheek. Was that a sigh? It clenched his heart. Perhaps a giant had been wandering past. A gust of wind blew and the clouds began to sway. A glimmer of moonlight trickled down, illuminating the pair sat closer than close. And Kairos recognized the figure. It was him. His own face, his own form, everything down to the tiniest detail. A mirror of himself. A Kairos caressing Rory like he was his. Rye! The water held him fast, caught and freezing. Words choked in his mouth. Rye didn't hear him. That ain't me! He may as well have been whispering. Fighting the rising tide, he struck out towards the pair. They sat shimmering in silver light, entwined and closer with every splash of sea spray. I'm sweet on you too, the figure wearing his likeness purred. I have been for such a long time. Everything he'd been too distracted to say. Was he some sort of coward after all? Swords and guns and firing cannons, bloodshed and stitching wounds, but somehow he'd fled from this. And it was not even a fight. He knew that. As soon as he'd seen, it ain't me, Rye, it's a siren! Salt waves smacked him across the face and he retched, doubled over. Siren! He tried to cry out, gagged on another splash. It might even be the same one. Had it chased them after they ran aground, bided its time and watched? ready to pick them off and drag them away to be feasted on or reforged into one of their own, or whatever it was sirens did. Nobody was ever seen again after the creatures picked them off. Oh, and he had left Rye alone. What an offering, practically gift-wrapped. All it had to do was, well, precisely what the creature was doing. Wide, pleading eyes watched as the other Kairos spoke gentle words against Rory's jaw. Say you'll be mine. The real Kairos was at their rock, scrabbling, dragging, heaving to reach them. Course I will. Rye was stunning in the moonlight. Rye! Kairos, the real one, was at his elbow, grasping, chilled to the core as he stretched a hand out. Rye, it's not! Shivering fingertips brushed Rory's sleeve. His own eyes turned to look down at him, blazing fury. A cracked smile broke all teeth. Kiss me, Rye, the thieved voice crooned, but it did not take its stolen eyes off Kairos. It's not... But Rory was already leaning in. Lost to the words the mortal behind him had been too foolhardy to say. Rory was wrong. Kairos wasn't smart at all. He was such an idiot. His reward for it came swift and horrifying. The creature wearing his likeness drew Rory close, nose to nose, then skin to skin. It pressed into his lips, still with that cracked smile. One locked moment under the moon. Kairos buckled, hanging onto the rock as he swayed. A torrent of emotions bubbled up in his soul, seething jealous, the touch he could have had, longing, bitter and heated for all the things he wanted so badly. Rage and hurt and sorrow and complete bone-shaking fear. Rory was caught in a web, a lie built on truth, hidden secret but still there. Theirs, their truth, layers deep, beneath everything. The siren had sniffed it out in them. The creature tightened its grip, biting at lips, beginning to laugh. Hands grew longer, nails into claws into flesh. Rory yelped but made no other sound as he was dragged off the rock and under the waves. The remnants of their splash cascaded like jewels. Kairos screamed at the empty space where Rory had been, his real voice drowned out in the ocean. He would follow, of course. What else could he do? He would never abandon Rye again. So, though every fibre of his body begged him not to, Kairos took a final breath and flung himself after the pair. The water was so cold it slammed at his organs. Blinking furiously, squinting against the burning salt, he surged, deeper and deeper, chasing the dark. A flicker of a tail flashed. He kicked and snatched, dragging himself into the below. How far did the ocean plummet? He'd never given it thought, but now it consumed him. Flames ignited in his chest, begging for air. He would suffocate in this murky nothingness. That certainty spurred him on, under and under, as the world faded in a blur. Where was Rory? Another flash of scales. He followed doggedly. And then, there they were. Water flooded his breath as he dived again, down and down. Screaming into the dark, he reached for the man dangled in the siren's grip. A hiss screeched, nails clattered at his throat, a tail swatted him away. His own eyes glared bright in the gloom. Rory hung between them, head bobbing slow in the wake. He saw, without conscious thought, Kairos and Kairos. Was he in a dream? Each had seen the other in their slumber, over and over, but the ice at his skin told him this was horribly real. The tearing at his lungs begged him to wake up and draw a breath, but he could not. He was released as the others clashed. Swaying back in the waves, he stared. Smudged shapes brawled, both seemed familiar. Struggling, he grabbed at both until they stopped. Two faces turned to him, bruised and bleeding. On the right, a lip was torn. The other's nose was broken. Two hands reached, two offers, each to some great unknown. Death or joy, but which was which? He knew care, better than he ever dared to admit. The time to prove it had arrived, stakes at the ready. His mind drifted, ready to collapse into peace. Drowning was peaceful, wasn't it? That's what all the stories said. A hand closed at his wrist. Bright eyes rose, asking him to decide. It was a handsome face, sweet and smiling. He recognized every inch. The other face sat a few feet away, still reaching, calling for him. Rory turned, looking from one side of the mirror to the other. Which was his Kairos? Which had shared his every moment for near a decade? Schoolboys to cabin boys, children to men. Which had run with him from their tiny town, down to the gravel and the grit and up to the port? Which had clung tight to his hand as they set their first sail? Surely he knew. One of these men before him held more than a single heart in their chest. One of them held his own. If he listened, perhaps he would hear it beating. All in an instant he got his answer. He met the eyes to the left and saw Kairos. And it was clear, certain, real. Rory knew him. The sweet edges at his smile, the scrunched eyebrow as his nose continued to bleed. He knew this man. Kairos shone out in the depths, his beacon under the waves. But it was not joy that rippled through Rory now. The last thing fluttering at Kairos's face was relief and a final gasp for breath. No air came. Rory made a grab for him, pleading, but the eyes he finally recognized went blank, lifeless. The reaching hand fell from the water, and the real Kairos began to sink. It was wild hope that made him do it. Remnants of old stories hung around his mind and led him to the only option he had left. The second pair of hands grasped at him, and Rory let them. The creature slithered around him, holding tight, no getting away. Choice made. As they plunged together into the pitch black, everything went blissfully blank. Care? The waves were soft and the sun was dappled with fluffed clouds. Rory stroked sodden hair out of the man's eyes. Wakey, wakey. With a jolt and a lot of coughing, Kairos sat up and took a long drag of breath. He stared around, wildly searching for... Rye! Arms were flung around his waist, hugging on so tight it hurt. What happened? Hoarse, desperate words at his throat. You're... and we... Kairos clutched at his face, dripping sea spray. Every piece was scrutinized, checking for the smallest scratch. You're good? You weren't hurt? I'm all good, I swear. Rory managed to laugh as fingers brushed his chest. Hey, would you just... Care, look at me. He did. It took all of his effort, but Kairos finally met Rory's gaze and held it. We left a bunch of things not said, didn't we? He was starting to trail off, but clawed it back. So, I want to say it, all right? Get it all out, then you can say whatever you want, and we can work it all out. Yeah? Kairos nodded. You gonna come out of the water while you do this? No, not right now. If he was very, very lucky, maybe he would have time to say it all before Kairos realized. Letting their fingers lace together, he began to blurt it out. I'm sweet on you. Have been for ages. You always mattered to me, and then suddenly one day you mattered more than anything else. And I didn't tell you in case it wrecked everything. I figured having you in my life was better than breaking us and maybe never seeing you again, so... Yeah, that's the bit. Would you quit it with the I'm sorry stuff again? Man, it's getting old. Care rolled his eyes and dragged some seaweed from Rory's shoulder. I should have told you too. So we're both idiots. Because in case you didn't realise, you damn moron, I'm sweet on you too. I didn't figure that one out, no. Rory ducked as Kairos scruffed a hand through his hair in mock frustration. But I know now, and maybe we can... But he was halted in his tracks. Fingers wound in his hair, and lips crashed. Damn, Kairos was clever. He knew if he hadn't done it, Roy would never have dared. Sinking into that kiss, he savoured the sweet. It was nothing like the siren's touch. Guilt niggled as he remembered the swooping hope he'd felt lift him in the rock pool. But this was different. This time it was real, and it mattered. Something of his thoughts must have found its way through, because Care drew back, nudging his nose, mouth shining wet. "What's wrong?" Rory dropped his hands, suddenly chilly under the sunshine. Care, I gotta explain." "Explain what? Why are you looking at me like that?" "Rai. Kairos was up on his knees, reaching for him again. "Come on out, you're shivering. You'll catch your—" "I can't." Quiet words on the beach. "The hell?" Kairos was clever, so very clever, but he hadn't puzzled it together yet. "They got me. Please understand. I went under, Care. Please don't make me say it." "But you can just get out of the water." "For a bit, yeah. Not for long. Else I'll stop looking like me." "But you are you!" Desperate, a cry out. "You're Rai. You're my Rai and—" "Mine." Well, he'd finally said it. "I'd love to be yours." Again, Rory was quiet. Wet prickled his eyes as they flickered. "But I ain't me, and I don't reckon you'll want me when you know." "Know what?" The man in the sand was near tears of his own. "Just tell me, Rai. Tell me what the hell's going on. I don't understand." So, Rory let the illusion fade, falling from him like a jacket in warm weather. It left his eyes first, crackling into wide, bright ocean green, then the rest, shedding clothing into dust, arms and hands and skin left bare in scales. He chewed his lip hard. "I had to save you." At last, Kairos was clever again, whirring and whizzing as the pieces flew together. "You let them take you down? So you could get me out?" "Yeah." What else could he say? "But—" Words were failing the both of them, it seemed, as Kairos waved and gestured wildly in the air. "But that's not— This isn't—" "What?" Dragging himself higher on the sand, Rory watched, confused. "This ain't fair!" Kairos was shouting at him, staring, utterly outraged. "The hell are you on about?" But the rest of his question was wiped from his tongue as Care yelled, "You're even hotter now!" A beat sat between them, then another. "You really think so?" It may be the first time in history a siren had blushed. Yeah." And Care was upon him in an instant, diving into the surf, tackling the creature called Rory, hands back in his hair, mouth firmly at his cheek. "But I could be lying. I could be a siren pretending to be me." The worry had grabbed onto Rory and not let go. Could Care ever truly trust him? As they lay in the crashing tide, Kairos spoke the one truth that mattered most now, and it saw them through to the end of their days. "If this ain't you, then you're already dead. If it is, I get another shot. So I don't care which it is. I'll take it. You're my Rai, so it's real to me." The end. As ever, let me know any thoughts, feelings, or opinions in the comments down below. Don't forget to hydrate yourselves and go on, have a little snack. You deserve it. Anyway, I'll see you in probably another week or so. I love you all. Bye-bye.